So we're going to talk a little bit about non-attribution, right? And this is important, right? Like I said, you don't, like when you're running malware, you want to run it in a closed environment where you're not beaconing out from your IP address or whatever, right? Same thing when you're doing scans, right? You don't want to let the attacker, let the bad guy know that, like, hey, here I am and I'm looking into you, right? Because that can, number one, he's going to cut off the link in the chain that you're coming back to, and he's also going to, he may target you specifically, right? Which can put you in a bad situation. So some ways you can kind of, do this is just kind of by anonymizing your activity. Using things like cell phone networks is pretty good because, you're basically just getting a publicly accessible IP address. It's not necessarily tied to you specifically, and they're always DHCP. You can use some sort of undercover network or like a dedicated line that has, information not tied directly back to you. You can do VPNs or hosting services, basically the same thing that the bad guys are doing. You can use to look at the bad guys. Or proxies and things like that, basically things to kind of push your traffic through, right? These are kind of some of the same mechanisms that the bad guys are using, so we can use it too to kind of look at them, right? It's kind of the goes both ways. One thing I want to point out is that scanning traffic is not necessarily unusual. If they have a publicly accessible IP address, they're getting scanned too, right? I mean, that's just the nature of having a public address. So, but you do want to be kind of careful about how you approach it. You don't want to be, knocking at their door, kind of constantly scanning the thing, right? Because then they're probably just going to get ticked off and go, "Why is this guy doing this?" Right? Let's look into him, type of thing. Kind of the suspect fingerprinting, right? We're gonna talk primarily about using ZenMap to kind of identify some information, and we'll talk kind of more specifically about what we can get out of it, such as running processes, open ports, kind of the network connections that exist on the system. But we can also, and this is one of the things I really want to stress, is kind of the network traffic data. We talked about this quite a bit on the first day. I kind of tried to push you in that direction. But network traffic can give you a really good idea about what not only what is going on in the system now, but historical information as well. So if the attack occurred, like we looked at it and it was in August, right? Now, fast forward to April, right? We have all that time in between that if we hadn't identified it till now, right? We have all that time in between where stuff was going on. And logs and kind of the net flow data that either the service provider has or the hosting facility or whatever, they may be able to give some information about what that was being used for during that time period. So it's important to kind of have that kind of historical perspective, which you may not get from disk images and so on and so forth. So here's kind of, I know it's really small, but here's kind of like your typical, ZenMap output. This is actually ZenMap, not Nmap, although it's basically just running an Nmap command. And if we were to kind of, if you were to look at kind of some of the different aspects that you can get from it as far as the kind of the OS details, running services, the actual open ports and things. And then here's like my pretty sweet graphic. You don't know how long that slide took me to do when I actually did it. Getting all those things to be in the right spot took forever. But you can see, we can kind of see like running services. Like in this case, you have SSH is open. You have Apache. You have a web server open, MySQL, PostgreSQL. Open ports, you have 22, which is SSH. 3306 is, I believe, MySQL. 9999 is Postgres, I think. 80 is web, of course. And then you also have kind of the OS details, right? You can see that this is, a Linux 2.6 kernel, right, basically. Now, that isn't that detailed. It's not telling you that it's Ubuntu or CentOS or whatever else. These are right here. They're basically saying that it's Ubuntu. But, it's not like this is definitive information, but at least gives you a better idea so you can prepare for it, right? That you kind of have a better idea of the operating system you may be confronting as opposed to kind of walking in there blind. And here's just kind of, another kind of another little interpretation, kind of a little bit more of a, kind of GUI-based breakdown of that.